because I just had it on, and someone well, more than one person commented on the live saying there was no sound. So hopefully it's working this time. I'm just going to start and we'll see how we're getting on. So today's live is about how to build your fortress of solitude, right? So I've just been writing a draft for a new blog article on this. How to build your fortress of solitude, free yourself of constraints and dependencies to create a life on your terms, right? Now that title pretty much tells you what it's about, but what got me going, thinking about this term, how to build your fortress of solitude, was the movie, The Gambler, right? So I'll put a little, later on, I'll drop a link down to this clip in the movie, The Gambler. But if you've seen it, this is about the guy who's the gambler, which is Mark Wahlberg playing a guy called Jim Bennett, and another guy called Frank, played by John Goodman. And it's an absolute brilliant scene, right? So I'll just read it. I've got the script down here, and then we'll talk about what it means, right? So the scene starts off like this. Jim Bennett, Mark Wahlberg, right? He says, I've been up $2.5 million. Frank, what you got on you? Jim Bennett, nothing. Frank says, what you put away? Jim Bennett says, nothing. Frank says, you get up $2.5 million. Any arsehole in the world knows what to do. You get a house with a 25-year roof, an indestructible Jap economy shitbox. You put the rest into a system at 3 to 5% to pay your taxes, and that's your base. You get me? That's your fortress of fucking solitude. That puts you, for the rest of your life, at a level of fuck you. Somebody wants you to do something, fuck you. Boss pisses you off, fuck you. Own your own house. Have a couple of bucks in the bank. Don't drink. That's all I have to say to anybody on any social level. He then says, did your grandfather take risks? Jim Bennett says yes. And Frank says, I'm guaranteed that he did it from a position of fuck you. A man's life is based around fuck you. The United States of America is based around fuck you, and so on, right? So in that particular scene, which is brilliant, Frank, John Goodman, is referring to buying a house there and putting some money aside for investing, right? Getting a financial base as your fortress of solitude so that you don't then feel exposed. And you know, this is kind of it. My explanation of a fortress of solitude, by the way, will be a bit more rounded than that. You know, it is a financial base. It's a massive part of it, because if you get financial independence, then you've got no one telling you what to do. But it is wider than that, right? Because, you know, to me, a fortress of solitude is basically personal power, right? It's having enough personal power to live a life on your terms without fear, right? So it's not just money. It's being able to feel free to do whatever you want without judgment. Say what you want. Obviously, we don't want to be offending people and things like this, but you should have your own opinions, decide what you want to do. And living a life on your terms is all about that. Hey, how are you doing? Thanks, Gavin. Yeah, so, you know, living a life on your terms is very much about that. And in that scene in The Gambler, obviously it's absolutely brilliant scene. It really, really captures the essence of building your own fortress of solitude. You know, who do we know in this world that has that kind of fuck you money? Well, there are quite a few people that are in the media at the minute with that kind of level of power. It is personal power, as Tony Robbins says. And in this article, so obviously I'm going to have this fully completed. It's a draft blog article I'm going to have fully complete. I point out the 3 areas that, you know, when we go to school, we learn everything, right? But if you think about what the schooling system does, particularly in the West, it teaches us all the skills. What I would say is to make us all good little slaves, pay our taxes, get ourselves hooked into the system with all sorts of debts and constraints. And, you know, it teaches everything, like good at mathematics, good at English, good at science, all these, like, you know, general knowledge skills, which are great. And they're great for, you know, if you think about the schooling system, it's almost like priming us as new. I don't want to get all conspiracy theorist here, but it teaches us all the skills that would be great in the economy, right? Everything that would serve the economy, good jobs, all the rest of it. And that's fantastic, right? But if you think about what does school not teach us that it should, right? And if school doesn't teach us these things, where do we get the lessons from? So in this draft article, I've got a section area, the 3 areas that we don't learn at school that we should, right? And out of all of those skills, which, you know, school teaches us, like how to be, you know, great mathematicians, a lot about history, problem solving, all this. The 3 areas that we don't learn are physical, relationships, and finance, right? So let's take them in turn. Physical, this is looking after our health, right? We do not learn how to look after our health. Relationships, how to interact with people, how to create, you know, communicate, how to create meaningful relationships. And the issue with relationships, unless we've got, like, come up with the perfect upbringing, we've got perfect parents, you know, nuclear family, all the rest of it, chances are, have we had a really good role model? So where do we learn that from? And then the final one, finances, which is covered in the film The Gambler. We go to school, learn about maths and all this stuff, right? But we don't learn how to manage money at school. And I think about how the society teaches us. There's a model there, isn't there? You know, you leave school, you get a job, or, you know, if you're gonna, you might go to university and then get a job, whatever. But after you finish your studies, you get a job and you're taught to do well and progress through a career, you know, whatever that might be. And then, you know, where does that lead you? You're then expected to get, say, a mortgage, get married, because everyone else is doing it, have kids. And all of these things are, like, these decisions are the big decisions in your life that are likely to have the biggest impact for, like, a decade or longer, right? And if you're like I did, if you go into these areas of life unconsciously or just following the herd, right, because you haven't designed this yourself, you haven't created the life on your terms, you're just following everyone else because that's societal model, you can really fuck this up, right? And it'll affect you for like a decade or more. You know what I mean? You can end up with like a massive mortgage, a car on finance just because you have to have a new BMW because everyone else has got one. You have to look the part. And then you end up a flipping slave to it. I remember my neighbour before they emigrated to Australia, right? My neighbours next door. They retired at 50. They only used to work 2 days a week, traders, right? It's fantastic. Retired at 50. And he had all these kind of mental models. He was, you know, the guy there, a real good friend of mine, and we used to talk about all this stuff. And he used to always say to me, one thing his dad taught him was, make sure your house is your slave and not your master, right? And you could say that for everything, your whole lifestyle. You know, you don't need, do you really need to get that car on finance, right? And this is the point, right? If you were to, these 3 areas, physical, relationships and finance, also happen to be on the life harmony model, and they form like a pyramid, like a triangle, like the base of it. And they're so important. Decisions you make on your physical health, right? The decisions you make in relationships, who you spend your time with, and the decisions you make financially, whether you get that car on finance or not, or whether you invest that money into something better, have a huge, the biggest impact on your life in terms of designing a life on your terms. So like how, if we have blindly followed the herd and we've got ourselves into a position where we've got this job that we can't walk away from, this career, because we've got a mortgage, kids, car on finance, maybe you're married, you've got 2 cars on finance, whatever, and now we're in this situation, it feels like the cost of living's going up. It's like, it can feel like a huge amount of constraints left unchecked if you're living unconsciously. Every decision you make, right, every decision you make on this, when you say yes to one thing, you say no to other things. So you're actually creating a constraint by design. Now, we have to make decisions. We can't stay still. But really, you should be making decisions that are going to, well thought through, and they're going to positively impact you in terms of building your fortress of solitude. How do we do that? Well, what I would urge you to do, get something like this, a life harmony model, and fill it out, right? Just the way you do this is just mark from 0 to 100% on each axis. Fill it out. Find out where you are, where you rate yourself from 0 to 100 in terms of financially at the minute. Where do you think you are in terms of your relationships? And we're not just talking romantic relationships, we're talking about what is your relationship like with your parents, with your friends, who are that, because, you've heard of the term, your net worth is your network. your net worth is your network, right? So that's kind of true. It's like you need good people around you if you're going to hit your goals, right? So where do those relationships look like? What does your physical health look like? Physical health is one of them things that if you get wrong, will hurt you potentially for as long as you turn that around, or maybe even for a lifetime, if you go the wrong route with that. So these things are really important. What do? Fill out the life harmony model, know where you are on this in terms of from 0 to 100%. So just mark yourself off and then create some goals, right? Create some goals in them areas to improve, right? And just by creating a goal, which is a target, and working towards it each day. Yes, it is so underrated having a journal. I was just going to point out that. Thank you very much for the comment. And yes, using something like a journal to write down your goals and work towards them each day. This is what I do. So in my journal, I write down the top 3 things every day. What are the top 3 things that I am going to work on towards my goals? And then literally start moving steps towards those goals, taking action, looking at them 3 areas that I've mentioned. Well, there's 7 areas on the life harmony model, but those 3 areas are absolutely paramount because they are such big decisions. What you do with your physical health and how you look after yourself, right, it's just like self-respect, how you treat yourself, right? What you do in terms of your financial base to build that financial independence, and relationships, who you spend your time with, they are so important. If you get them wrong, that can screw you over for 10 years or more, right? So create some goals and start working towards them every day. This is what I do. And I tick these things off every day, 3 small things. And this is how you get things done. Goals are achieved incrementally. And that is basically how you create your very own fortress of solitude. Every day gets better, right? And just because you're consciously now working towards improving those areas. So give it a go. I've put some links down below. And let me know what you think. I'm just going to have a quick look at this, see if there's anything else that I talk about. No, just on decisions. I've got a point here on decisions. So, right, if we did follow the herd and we happen to sort of, make some poor decisions in the past just because everyone else is doing it, and, we're now saddled with debt and things like this and struggling. Hindsight's great, but you have to kind of let that go. Any decisions you made in the past, it's important to let them go, because generally we make decisions based on the knowledge that we had at the time. So even if now we come into new knowledge and we have some hindsight, it doesn't matter, because if you were to turn the clock back, you'd probably make the same decision again based on the knowledge you had at the time. So it's best just to let those things go, and then from this moment start making better decisions. You know what I mean? From this moment now, a bit more conscious, a bit more educated. You've seen the errors of your ways. Start freeing yourself of constraints in your life, right? Constraints are any decisions that you end up making that hold you back from the life that you really want, right? So you have to make decisions. Every time you make a decision, you say yes to one thing and no to other things, right? So you're creating constraints by default. Just make sure those decisions are yours, right? And they're in alignment with your identity and the life that you want to live, right? So make sure it's on your terms. Then the constraints are all by design. They're all yours, you know what I mean? They're not someone else's, because if you blindly follow the masses, that's where you can be put in a box and become that good little slave feeding someone else's vision for you. Don't get caught out, all right? Go and start making some goals, achieving them, working towards them. Create your own fortress of solitude, all right? Thanks for listening. See you all next time.